All right, let's jump right into this. The 2026 World Cup has officially expanded to 48 teams, which promises way more global representation. But inevitably, it also sets up these massive clashes between absolute footballing royalty and wide-eyed newcomers. Matchdays 3 and 4 delivered some incredible, cinematic drama that perfectly captured the exhilarating and, honestly, sometimes brutal reality of this new era. In today's explainer, we're unpacking that immense, often terrifying gap between international heavyweights and tournament debutants. And as you'll see, we'll also look at how occasionally that script gets completely flipped. 13-1. Yeah, you heard that right. 13-1. That is the combined scoreline from just two of the games we witnessed over these match days. We aren't talking about light training ground exercises here. We're talking about the sheer, unforgiving brutality of top-tier footballing nations just completely asserting their dominance on the world's biggest stage. It's a staggering statistic, right? It totally demands our attention. Because the thing is, this 13-1 figure isn't just a random number. It's cinematic evidence of the terrifying, seemingly unstoppable power that established footballing nations possess. Look, for smaller nations fighting tooth and nail just to be here, arriving at the 2018 World Cup is literally a dream come true. But lining up in the tunnel against the giants of the sport, that is a brutal reality check. The margin for error isn't just small, it's practically non-existent. So let's start with Act 1, the slaughter. We're looking at these ruthless, tactical machines that showed absolutely zero mercy to lower-ranked or newly arrived teams. Just look at this juxtaposition. On one side, you have the immense pedigree and attacking firepower of heavyweights like Germany, along with a really sharp Canadian squad. And then, on the other side, you have teams like Curaçao, making this deeply emotional debut as the smallest nation to ever qualify, and a Qatari side desperately trying to find their footing. It's the classic tale of immense firepower meeting a very harsh initiation. The reality of this mismatch was on full display in Houston during Group E's opening fixture. Germany came out looking like an absolute movie villain. I mean, they functioned as this unstoppable, well-oiled machine, completely dismantling the tiny Caribbean nation of Curaçao in a 7-1 bloodbath. The German side was ruthless. We saw an absolute masterclass from Joshua Kimmich controlling the tempo, and a devastating goal from Jamal Musiala, who basically just danced his way through the defense to compound Curaçao's misery. And it doesn't stop there. Canada mirrored that exact same ruthless efficiency over in Group B. They crushed Qatar 6-0, just completely tore apart the Qatari defense with surgical precision. An early goal from Nathan Saliba really set the tone, and then Jonathan David stepped up and delivered this absolutely stunning volley. It was an offensive clinic that just left the lower-ranked side totally reeling. And you really have to consider the psychological toll of these matchups. When you look at the post-match emotional fallout from the managers, guys like Canada's Jesse Marsh and Qatar's Julen Lopetegui, the overwhelming sentiment across the board was that this was a harsh lesson on the biggest stage. When the tactical disparity is that vast, it's not just a physical defeat for the underdogs. It's a heavy, one-sided thrashing that tests their mental resolve to the absolute limit. Which naturally leads us to ask, is this gap literally insurmountable? Does this newly expanded tournament format only exist to feed the underdogs to the final bosses of global football? Keep that question in the back of your mind. Because just as we thought we had this World Cup all figured out, the script changed entirely. Which brings us to Act 2, the blueprint for an upset. Let's pivot our focus over to Group D, where a gritty underdog hero actually emerged to prove that David still has a stone for Goliath. To really understand the scale of this upset, we have to look at the opposition. Turkey came into this match as heavy favorites. They were returning to the World Cup stage for the first time since their legendary third-place finish way back in 2002. They brought the high ranking, the historic pedigree, and honestly the overwhelming expectation that they would easily control their group stage destiny. But Australia, they had a game plan, and man, did they execute it to absolute perfection. Their 2-0 Masterclass followed a brilliant timeline. They knew they couldn't outpossess Turkey, so instead, they absorbed relentless early pressure. They just waited for their moment. They found a massive breakthrough in the 27th minute and then sealed the whole deal with a devastating late counterattack. It was a tactical clinic in giant killing. And their defensive blueprint is exactly how they survived that initial onslaught. The Socceroos frustrated the Turkish attackers at every single turn. It was a total defensive swarm. Guys throwing their bodies on the line. Burgess was an absolute wall out there, making crucial blocks time and time again. They forced Turkey's biggest stars, like Güler and Kökçü, into taking desperate, long-range, off-target shots. Australia completely neutralized Goliath's weapons, setting the perfect trap for a counterstrike. And that leads right into Act 3, A Star is Born. Because look, you can't win a game just by defending for 90 minutes. You need someone to step up and actually deliver the fatal blow. Check out the profile of our two breakout heroes here. We aren't talking about seasoned 100-cap veterans. We're talking about 18-year-old attacker Nestory Irankunda and goalkeeper Patrick Beach. This proves a timeless footballing truth. Sometimes youthful fearlessness is exactly what you need to completely shatter veteran experience and expectation. Let me paint a picture for you of the exact moment this tournament flipped on its head. Picture this, 27th minute. A great ball played in behind. Irankunda perfectly times his run off the shoulder of the defense. He takes out the defender with a sublime single touch just to compose himself, backs off slightly, and strikes this incredibly pure left-footed finish that pings right off the post and into the net. Literally centimeters away from missing, but it goes in. Pure magic. And on the other end of the pitch, you have the number 3. Why does that matter? Because Australian goalkeeper Patrick Beach secured a monumental clean sheet against a terrifying Turkish attack on only his 3rd ever appearance for the national team. Denying volleys, commanding his box, and anchoring the entire defense with the calm of a guy who's been there 100 times. And if pulling off that 2-0 victory wasn't enough of a statement, just look at this chilling post-match warning from the 18-year-old prodigy himself. He simply said, "There's plenty more to come from Australia." With one swing of his left boot and one sentence to the press, Irankunda absolutely solidified his status as the breakout star of the group stages. Finally, let's talk about bridging the global gap. So what do we actually take away from all this? Let's zoom out and look at the broader implications for the future of international football. In this explainer today, we've explored two massive extremes. On one hand, you've got the brutal reality of 7-1 and 6-0 tactical slaughters, where established giants just tear apart the debutantes. But then, on the other hand, you have the inspiring hope of 2-0 underdog masterclasses, where flawless tactics and fearless youth actually topple historic heavyweights. That is the dual nature of an expanded World Cup. Which leaves us with one final, undeniable question to ponder today. As we watch the rest of this tournament unfold, will the 48-team era ultimately serve to just widen the gap between the elite and the rest of the world? Or, actually, has FIFA just set the absolute perfect stage for a completely new generation of giant killers to write their names into history? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep your eyes on the pitch.